Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. So, I ran across a little snippet on Instagram, and it was like a snapshot into the 80s where there was like a kid. They were clearly like in an 80s living room, and the like narrator was saying, so in the future, 'cause, like the little girl was holding her diary, and the narrator said, like she was talking to the child, in the future, you're just going to say everything in your diary out loud for free for the whole world to see. And it just resonated so deeply with me because it's kind of what I feel like I'm doing. I mean, I do keep some stuff private to me, but I try to share as much as I can that I'm comfortable with, that I feel will resonate with folks that have invisible illnesses, whether it's anxiety, depression, a disability, you're a stroke survivor, alcoholism, all of these things. I like to talk about the emotional side of it. I have always been passionate about sharing my emotions, and today I get to do that in order to help other people. And guess what? I don't get paid for it either. Like, I'm just doing this for fun. I don't know. I'm just doing it because it's what drives me. It's important to me because of the suffering that I have experienced. If I can say something to cut that in half or lessen somebody else's suffering and even the slightest bit, it's worth it for me. So today I'm actually talking about something that I am not terribly comfortable talking about. And those of you who have been listening for a long time know that this idea of faith is something that I'm growing into. And I want to talk about it a little bit because it's been a big deal in my stroke recovery, and it started in my sobriety. It's something that I always wanted when I was a little girl, and throughout my drinking days, I called out to God or a higher power or anyone that would listen. One night in the middle of the night, while I was drinking, like, God, please help me. And I feel that this was the beginning of this journey of faith for me. Like when it really actually started to have feet and started to move forward. So I'm going to talk about it. I did get feedback once from one of the listeners, you know who you are, that you really enjoy when I talk about my faith journey. So here you go. This episode is for you. So sobriety introduced me to faith. It introduced me to faith as a discipline. So the step 2 says I came to believe in a power greater than myself. And in the beginning, I mean, I always wanted to believe in a power greater than myself. I've always believed in a power greater than myself. I don't think that I'm one of the ones who came into the program and thought of myself as God, but I didn't know what that higher power was. I didn't know how to build a relationship with it. I didn't have any idea where to start. And what I learned in my program was to ask for help, was to have gratitude, like thanking God for my sobriety every day, and that if I don't believe, act as if I believe. And that was enough for me. That was all I needed to keep an open mind. And albeit it was only slightly ajar, it really was slightly ajar. Because when I heard people talk about God, I got uncomfortable. And at that time, my sponsor was had a very strong faith. And this was my first sponsor. And she talked about God and prayer and going to church and all these things, like without hesitation. She just like it was just, you know, something that we talk about. It's that it wasn't a question. God's existence was not a question. So she just talked about it as fact. And as I continued to go to meetings and I saw others showing their personal experience that was evidence for them that God existed and had the power to change a human life, the door opened just a little bit more. And I started to see that this recovery program was heavily dependent on believing in something outside of yourself. The key that I heard in the beginning that was important to me is that thing that we believe in outside of ourselves, it does not have to be God. That's what I heard over and over again. So in the very, very early stages when I kept drinking, but I was going to my sobriety meetings, I was toying around with like, what could be my higher power? I thought more about what specific thing could be my higher power than participating in something larger than myself. And recognizing that I needed to build a routine around or a habit around dependence on something outside of myself. So I saw it, but I didn't understand it. And then slowly through the first 3 years of my sobriety, I heavily relied on acting as if. And I just did. I just did. When my sponsor told me, like, make sure that you try to practice gratitude when there's something that you appreciate in your life, when there's good things that you see, when something makes you happy, find gratitude. And it was her idea that really was life-changing for me, to send her 3 things that I was grateful for every day. And it took about 3 years for me to get into the habit of it, to actually send them to her. But the concept was not lost on me. So throughout the day, I started to it crossed my mind. When something made me happy or something good happened, I would look up and I would think, thank you. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal to remember to do that. But slowly I did. And after 3 years, at this time I had a new sponsor, and I was sitting in a meeting next to her, and somebody mentioned something about getting on their knees before bed. And I leaned over to her and I was like, do you do that? Do you actually get on your knees? Because people talk about it all the time. And she said that she did not, but she agreed. There's lots of people who do that. And I said, well, I'm going to do it. And that's willingness. I'm going to do it. I felt ridiculous, if I'm completely honest. I shut my door at night before I went to bed because I didn't want anybody to walk in on me, my kids. I didn't want my kids to walk in and see me on my knees before I went to bed. Like, Mom, what are you doing down there? And I would have been like, oh, I dropped such and such. I'm just picking it up, because that's how embarrassed I was to believe in something bigger than myself, to actually act like it was real, that there was really something else out there that could help me. So I did it in private. And eventually, as I practiced it, I started doing it with the door open. And I didn't care if somebody walked in. And I think I had prepared language if somebody caught me. My daughter did walk in once and I said, I'm saying my gratefuls or something like that because they knew that I did my gratefuls. And yeah, so when I think back on it now, I'm like, that's pretty cool that if somebody, if my kids did walk in or if my daughter did see me, I mean, it's kind of a fuzzy memory, but I'm pretty sure that she did. It's kind of cool that I was showing an example of faith. So fast forward, I had a stroke. And I became just completely, uh, I guess fearful would be the best description. Um, I was so afraid of the uncertainty that I was in. Um, it became so real how I lacked any control at all over my future, my present, my health, and I was scared. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anything that that was consistent, that was like a foundation. I I felt like I was cast out into the ocean and I had no life vest. Like I was helpless and hopeless. That's how I felt. So I'm not quite sure the order of things, but I do know that I picked up my recovery Bible, which I did have next to me, but I don't have it now. Um, and obviously I have this visual disability, and I thought, well, this isn't going to work. I bought the recovery Bible because I wanted it. I wanted to have it, and it has a workbook that goes with it, but it wasn't going to work with my disability. So I ended up getting a audio version of the Bible, and it's one of the versions where it's supposed to be more understandable. It's like more modern language. And I started listening. Um, I needed something. And I didn't know how to articulate this, how this change came about until recently. As you know, if you've been paying attention, I went to Celebrate Recovery for a few weeks, and that was another effort to like tie my sobriety program to faith, to the literature, to be able to start understanding a little more what's going on, not only what the stories are in the Bible, but how can I apply it in my life? And I really liked the lessons in Celebrate Recovery. What I didn't like is the one that I was going to was very loud. There was lots of music. There were kids running around everywhere, prior to when everything settled down. And even during the lesson, there was video up on the screen, and the sound was just too loud for me to handle. So I made the decision that wasn't going to work for me. But in all these various efforts, and as you know, I've also been going to church now every Sunday. So when we moved to this new development, now I have a church like in the community. So my husband takes me over every Sunday and drops me off, and I go in there and sing hymns and listen to the lesson. Like, I love it. I really do. I love it because it I feel I feel independent in there, yet I feel like I'm leaning into my dependence, right? I've talked about that before. Dependence on a higher power elicits independence. Um, so now we are up to the Lent season. Okay. So um, every week, the church has been handing us these packets that have a daily prayer. And it's been talking about, now I didn't get to go this past week because I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't get my packet. And I sent an email to the church and they never responded to me, so I didn't get my packet. But I need to actually, side note, I need to send a message to the pastor that keeps responding to me and ask him if I can get the packet. Okay, I'll do that. So, what the lesson was talking about last week was how Jesus went into the wilderness, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Okay, and it was talking about how this wilderness, this idea of Jesus going into the wilderness, is like comparative to us and any what wilderness that we experience, not doesn't isn't to test us, but is to deepen our faith, is to show us what we depend on in our lives. And so what I heard in one of them was when I that my faith became a thirst, like needing water in the desert. And when I read that, I just put the paper down and I thought, that, that, my friend, is what I felt after I had my stroke. That I had a thirst. It puts a lump in my throat because it's not a discipline anymore. It's not a daily practice anymore. It's not like just a choice that I'm making. My prayer and my faith became survival, became an emotional dependence, a thirst. And when I saw that in that reading, it really touched me. Like, my sobriety taught me to pray and to meditate, to speak to God and to listen. And even though I have been doing that all along, um, I'm learning. I feel like I'm not good at it. Even though I hear people say, like, oh, well, there's no wrong way, there's no right way. Like, you just do whatever's comfortable for you and blah, blah, blah. But I still felt this, like something was missing from it. I was going through the motions, and now my stroke has taught me to need God. So that testing, this wilderness that I am going through, has revealed a thirst for me. So after my stroke, there was no amount of success at work, productivity, or anything like that that was going to fulfill me. What I needed was no longer what I previously depended on. What I needed was faith, was God, was something, was truly believing in something bigger than myself because I was desperate. You know, I accepted that my life had changed and I invited other people into my struggle, going to support groups and all of these things. But I still needed something to guide me through it. And as you know, I've gone to my psychiatrist. I still go to my psychiatrist, and I talked to her about it too. That that I say my prayers, and that I believe that a power greater than myself keeps me sober. And I do believe that. I absolutely believe that because I go back to that evening in San Francisco when I was afraid to stop and get something to eat because I was afraid I was going to pick up a drink. And so I just walked around the block over and over and over again, afraid to eat, afraid to stop, hungry, but afraid that I was going to pick a drink up. So I just kept walking until I was stopped in my tracks. And I thought, you know, I kept saying, nobody would know, nobody would know, nobody would know, until I stopped in my tracks and I realized if I'm going to do this faith thing, if I'm going to do this program, then I would know and my higher power would know. If I'm going to go all in on faith, then my higher power would know. And that kept me from a drink that day and has kept me from a drink ever since then. So that same power that sustains my sobriety, I thought should be able to sustain me through my disability. That I realized that faith is available to me as deeply as I want to go. You know, that there is nothing else on this planet that can give me what I need to be emotionally and spiritually well after my stroke. I was scared as I can. I don't even know how to like scared isn't even the word is not strong enough of a word. I was terrified. Uh, so I needed something else to trust in because there was nothing else that anything that I ever relied on was gone, you know? So I felt like I need to be as sure of God as I am that of my breath, because that's the only way I'm going to make it. That's the only way that I can be available for the people in my life that I love. And what I have seen in my sobriety is I've seen how God changes people. People's faith in God changes them. And I've also seen that hope can be transmitted to me through someone else's example, someone else's story. And I've seen how we can recover together. as I've been walking through my stroke recovery over the past few years, I and especially over the past 6 months that I've moved into this new neighborhood, I can't believe it's been 6 months, that my faith can be communal as well. That I can lean into the church as much as I lean into my sobriety program and my stroke support groups, my vestibular support groups. Um, I, if I can act as if, you know, and not let this wilderness isolate me, because that's what it was doing. I was feeling so scared and quite honestly depressed and anxious, because I continue to have these heart palpitations. They're like panic attack feelings. Um, when I feel these things, they isolate me. They make me like crawl inside myself. And what I am trying to do is have those feelings, attach them to dependence in a higher power. Like, have those feelings of discomfort and uncertainty and fear push me towards dependence in God. So what I've experienced so far is that the thirst, the thirst in itself has given me hope. And I feel that my prayers are more connected. I feel deeper, like I have a deeper um, dependence or awareness or need, thirst. I mean, it keeps going back to that word thirst. And I feel like it has humbled me even more. Um, the stroke turned prayer into oxygen for me. And I think that it's been a pivotal phase of my life where I've been able to see that the hard stuff that I go through in my life, when I'm alone, I'm not alone. You know, like what I'm learning about, and I asked the pastor to share with me I want to say tapes, some like audio speaker sessions about spirit, because I don't know, like God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost or spirit, obviously, because I sound silly when I say it, because I don't know what I'm talking about totally. But I'm trying to learn. Like, I have the hunger, I have the thirst, and I am no longer praying out of habit. Um, I'm praying because it keeps me feeling protected and safe. And I need that right now in my life. So I wanted to talk about it, not because I want to convince anybody on this planet about that they should believe in God. What I wanted to talk about is how it can look, how faith can look. if you don't know what to do and you don't know where to turn, because that's where I have been. And that's what I have been experiencing. And this is just like an ongoing journey that I get to do for the rest of my life. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful that there is this thing that can sustain me. Um, and sometimes I stop and I think, I'm just making this up, you know, like I'm just making this up. Um, that's just leftover self-doubt from my past. That's me thinking that I'm silly and judging myself. Um, Instead of, like I talked about yesterday, just like closing my eyes and falling backward into God's hands. And that doesn't roll off my tongue easily, but it's something that I want to believe and I want to do. So that's what I'm going to keep trying to do. That's what I'm going to keep practicing. And I believe, if there's one thing I believe for sure, it's that if I keep practicing it, I'm going to get better at it. So thank you so much for joining me on this extremely uncomfortable episode, but I think very necessary episode. And I will talk to you next time.